Absolutely. No, that's great. Now these lines that are the vertical lines. Now these aren't just. It's not just a fishing wire that's put down. This is like a fairly. It's got to be a fairly rugged rope to withstand sort of currents and everything else that's in the ocean. So it's not as if, I guess what I'm thinking when we talk about lines is when say a right whale swims in and gets entangled, it's not as if they can break the line easily. It's pretty tight. Like these are pretty strong lines, right?
They are very strong. It's rope, right? Yeah,
it is rope. Yeah.
It's a rope. We tend to call them lines,
yep.
But it's different types of rope. There are different sizes of rope, and that also varies depending on what type of habitat the fishermen are fishing in, how strong the rope needs to be. And a researcher at the New England Aquarium, Amy Knowlton, has actually looked at the history of rope manufacturing and found that in the past 50 years, the ropes used in the lobster fishery have gotten a lot stronger, and entanglements have gotten a lot more severe. And so it might be because of the strength of the rope is influencing the entanglement severity.
That's interesting. I wonder what the material is that they use to make it stronger.
It's polysteel and polyethylene.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
so fairly strong sort of material.
And it has to be because the fishermen, it's expensive to buy, and the fishermen want to get a couple of years out of the rope.
Right.
So it needs to be durable.
Right.
But the difference between strength and durability is something we're working with to see if you can make a rope durable but have a breaking strength that is lower.
Okay. One of the things that I'm interested in knowing is it possible? The right whales tend to have certain routes that they take. I would imagine. And obviously the lobster traps are overlapping those routes in some form. Is it possible, maybe in the future through marine spatial planning, that lobster traps may not be able to be put in these routes at certain times of the year, or is it that's the best places to get lobster?
To some extent, that's already happening. They have closed off certain areas, and during certain times of the year when right whales migrate. One additional problem that we have is because we don't see the entanglements happen. Sometimes we don't know. Actually, most of the time, we do not know where the gear came from, where it originated, because most of the time when we see an entanglement, the whale has already. It's picked up the gear. It's swimming away with it. And they can have gear attached to them for months and months and still be okay. So we can't figure out exactly where the gear was set in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's an issue that we're working with. And there's there's a lot of ghost gear out there that gets moved off during a storm, and so we don't know where it was coming from.
Okay, great. Now, let's look at the effectiveness of all these reductions. Most of the time, I know there's so many reduction sort of innovations that are out there and that have been sort of implemented. Do they actually work on average? Like when you look at the ones that are in the database, it looks like there's probably about 30 of them, maybe even more. For the most part, do they reduce bycatch? And I guess what's your evaluation for reducing like a certain percentage? Are you looking for like a large percentage, or even just 1% reduction is good enough as long as it doesn't harm the fishing industry itself in terms of profits and things like that and catch?
It's complicated, I guess. There are a lot. It's all a trial and error kind of thing.
Right.
We might think we've got the best mitigation technique out there and try it, and there's no effect whatsoever. And so a lot of it is trying things that might not work,
right,
and eliminating them from the possibilities. So that is a lot of what happens with bycatch mitigation technology. But there have been a lot of successful techniques that have been adopted. So circle hooks is one of them.
Right.
It's been incredibly effective at reducing sea turtle bycatch in certain areas.
Okay.
Streamers on long lines. So when the long line goes into the water, fishermen can add streamers down the long line, and it acts as a bird scaring device.
Oh,
so
really?
Seabirds,
Yeah.
which dive down to try to get the bait, they're scared off, and it allows the hook and bait to sink to a depth that the seabirds can't get to. So it's simple, and it is incredibly effective at reducing significant amounts of bird mortality. So I think it's hard to put a certain percentage of what we want for bycatch, because if it's only 1%, is it really worth trying to change an entire fishery? And I guess it depends how hard it is for that technique to be adopted. If they're going to have to change parts of their gear, it's probably not worth it.
Right.
They're going to have to buy new things. So it depends on each fishery. It depends on how bad the bycatch species is doing.
Okay. One thing that just came to mind, I think they're called TEDs. I think they're turtle
Excluder devices.
Excluder devices. Now, I know they've been implemented in the Gulf of Mexico for a number of years now. And recent articles have shown that, like even even New York Times and things like that, and the literature have shown that there's been a lot of dead sea turtles that have washed up in the Gulf of Mexico. And I think initially they thought it was because of the oil spill that happened, and lately people are saying no, it's the fishing industry. Has there been a significant change in the use of the TEDs, or have they not been used as much, or are they being used and just not working anymore? Do you know, and can you even answer it?
I have been following the story because it's definitely relevant to what we do, and it's really controversial because yes, there are a lot more sea turtles being found washed up on shore this year than in any other year, and they're finding shrimp in the stomachs of some of the sea turtles.
Right.
And shrimp aren't part of the natural diet. It's only really when they're caught in a fishing gear that they're able to eat a shrimp.
Right. So sorry, before we go on, can you just describe what a TED does?
Yeah. So the TED is a turtle excluder device. It's the TED for short, and it's attached to the trawler, and it's kind of like a door for the turtle to swim out of. And they are really effective when they're used correctly. And so the controversy in the Gulf of Mexico is, there's a possibility that the use wasn't being enforced, or the compliance levels have dropped a little bit. There's evidence of that. But it's really complicated because they can't say for sure that oil wasn't in some way involved yet, that, there are a lot of other things going on in the Gulf at that time, dredging and stuff. So it's hard you can't totally put the blame on the shrimp fishermen, because it's
absolutely,
a topic. But yeah, in general, TEDs are very effective for mitigating sea turtle bycatch.
Okay, perfect. So what are the challenges, like the major challenges to reducing bycatch?
One of the problems is actually figuring out where bycatch is happening and to what degree it's happening. There's so many parts of the world where we can say, it's probably happening here. There's this population of, sea turtles or cetaceans that use this water, and we know that there's also this fishery that's overlapping with it. But because there's no observation going on, we don't know how serious of a problem it is. So that's one major issue. Once we have identified the fisheries where bycatch is happening, it's finding those techniques that are effective for reducing bycatch, that won't decrease the target catch, and that are practical for fishermen to implement. Coming up with something that meets all of those criteria is difficult. And then getting fishermen to adopt a new technology. In some places there's resistance to changing the way you fished your entire life. But if it's something simple and effective and easy to do, fishermen are more likely to adopt it.
Okay, perfect. Now, sort of the final question here. We have a lot of people that watch these programs that may not be scientists, may not be fishermen. And a lot of the stuff that we've discussed is how fishermen and how science and even governments can help reduce bycatch. How can individuals help reduce sort of the global effect of bycatch? What's the major thing that they could do?
I think the best thing an individual can do is be informed about where their fish is coming from. If they're a consumer of fish, if they know about the fisheries, if they, there are some certification programs that take bycatch into account when they certify the fishery. So looking for the MSC label, or checking with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch cards. That's a good way to get educated about the different types of fisheries. And often they take bycatch into account.
Right.
But since bycatch is such like a problem that spans across many different fisheries, and it's different in every fishery, it is hard to take into account to know what the potential bycatch is.
Right.
When you buy a fish.
Right. I guess there are certain target species that, depending on the way they're fished, may attract more bycatch than others, and that's what, say, for instance, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch program sort of takes into account. There's certain populations of fish that may have bycatch and there may not. And actually they have more than, like, I use on my iPhone an app, the Seafood Watch, and every time I go to a restaurant or I go to the grocery store, I use it to try and make it's my way of being better informed, because even as a scientist, I don't know all the fish, if they're sustainably caught or not. And I think it's this app and this program is probably one of the best ones out there. I think Ocean Voice, or there's another one as well. I can't remember the name right now. But
the Ocean Institute might have one too.
Yeah, I think so. But these are the ways that I guess individuals can really look at it and make, like you said, more informed decisions. And it'll slowly help. It may not help, outright, but it'll slowly help in terms of what species are caught best and most sustainably.
One of the best, consumer success stories is really in dolphin-safe tuna, because it was a bycatch issue in the eastern tropical Pacific where,
right.
Hundreds, thousands of dolphins were being caught during the tuna, while tunas were being fished.
Right.
And when consumers became aware of that situation, the demand for dolphin-safe tuna came about and changed the way people fish. So consumers can make a difference.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you very much, Kate. I really appreciate you coming on to the program. I learned a lot. I hope our viewers learned a lot as well. I think this is, bycatch is something that doesn't get a lot of, it gets a lot of media attention, but a lot in a negative way. We never hear about what's being done to reduce bycatch. And, the information that you provide today and the Consortium has provided people is going to be very effective, I think, in terms of making people more aware of bycatch and how it can be reduced. And I applaud your efforts to keep that going on. So thank you very much for coming on to the program. And maybe later on we can, in a year or so or a few months, we can sort of catch up on what's been going on and tell our viewers what's been going on in the past year or so.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you later.
Okay.